Building amazing experiences that engage and delight your customers is easy with Cameo. Our smart, reliable voice and messaging solutions are easy to implement and scale with you so you can deliver more calls and texts, be more competitive, and save money. With Cameo, you get peace of mind and happier customers. Find out why thousands of software platforms and enterprises trust Cameo with their communications. Get a demo today.
Well, Happy New Year and welcome to a new edition for 2023 of Telecom Wise Guys from the Cloud Voice and Messaging Pros here at Cameo. I'm Tim McLean, the Director of Marketing. Welcome in and really excited to be joined again by Brian Ford, our Senior VP of Messaging. Brian, welcome back.
Thanks, Tim. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, I don't know about you. It was a pretty basic holiday for me. Didn't really go anywhere. Didn't do anything, which was perfect. I don't know about you. How was your holiday?
Yeah, I think, a little quieter, but sometimes I think we need those. We get so busy in the shuffle that we forget to just focus on, the fruits of our labor and being able to spend time with family and slow things down. So I kind of appreciate the slower
I'm with you.
holiday season sometimes.
I'm with you. We're based here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I have a lot of family up in Pennsylvania, so I'm sort of used to that 9 to 12 hour holiday drive. Didn't miss that at all. Didn't miss it at all. Stayed home. But by the way, I want to say a special thank you to the FCC for their holiday present. You know about this, Brian?
You'll
recognize it. We talked about it before. No, their present just before Christmas when they made their big press announcement that they were going after the providers that were enabling the phony calls to our phone saying, "Hey, we're trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty." And
oh yes,
I don't know about you, but I haven't gotten any since I actually got that press release. So chalk one up for a win for a government agency doing their job, going after these folks.
I think stir shaking is tightening down a little bit further and further as we go along, and they're the trace back stuff is getting very quick, and
right.
Putting people's feet to the fire for what they're allowing on their networks is really making people second guess. You don't want to get those hefty fines. So.
Oh yes, and they're getting heftier. Yeah, I think a lot of things loaded in what you were saying. I mean, I've been in the industry now, going into my fourth year. Actually, I just finished my fourth year, so this will be my fifth year, which doesn't sound like a lot. There's a lot of folks like you, Brian, who have been in the industry even longer, and some people even longer.
17, I think. Yeah. So.
Wow. And I don't know about you, but when I walked in the door, there was no stir shaken. There was no sort of signing of calls. That was sort of a figment in their imagination. Same thing on the messaging side, right? Like we didn't have the registration for brands and campaigns that we have from the campaign registry. So we had people trying to ram application to person messaging through person to person rails at the provider level, and everybody I think was sort of generally happy about that from a performance standpoint, but man, consumers were not happy.
I mean, and it's interesting, the A2P and P2P traffic, the application to peer and person to person peer, language has been around for a very long time. I believe when CTIA first came out and was kind of regulating this stuff, it was language that was very early on. So
right.
It's been around for a long time, but the application on how it was used, it really wasn't enforced to what we're seeing it like today until our more recent years. So
and I think, Brian, you'd agree. I mean, everything has changed in the last roughly 2 years. So we went from you have to make sure that you're registered with the robocall database to making sure that your calls are being signed if you're a cloud voice provider, so that because we use these terms a lot. Even last year, Brian, was know your customer. So as a provider, for instance, like Cameo, we're a member of the Traceback Group. We're also a REST-Borg for toll-free. Like we're doing everything completely above board. When we get notifications about suspected robocalls or any sort of bad traffic, we have tools to research it. We're enforcing that. And it's become a much more compliance-centered industry. we have to know our customer, which what I wanted to sort of bring us to was, yes, Stir Shaken is running on the voice side and we're signing our customers' calls and we're being really careful about who we're letting onto our network and what calls we're delivering. But that has, as we've been saying over the last few episodes, transitioned over to messaging. So now, and I think you'd be the first one to know, or to be aware, up until very recently, there were a fair number of folks out there that were doing 10-digit long code messaging, but not registering their traffic. And it hasn't been mandated, but it feels like we're almost on the cusp of that becoming a mandate. And the carriers are really clamping down on registering brands and campaigns. Because one of the first questions, by the way, we got when I was warming up here for our session was, hey, I am now registering my campaigns, but most of them are getting rejected. Why? First of all, why is that, Brian? And what issues are we seeing with rejected campaign registrations?
Well, there's a few of them. Some of the bigger ones are that we see coming back is when your sample messages don't match your website. Right. Like a sample message error. So what people need to realize is that this is a manual vetting process now, and it gets handled, each campaign gets manually vetted. They're going to go through and they're going to look at the URLs. They're going to check for redirects. They're going to look for language like third party or affiliate marketing, where that stuff is now automatically shut down at that level. They're going to go through your terms of service and your privacy policy to make sure you're not selling lists or that you're not getting lists that are generated from, or being purchased elsewhere, right?
Right.
Are you following the CTIA guidelines for opt-in? That's why there's actually in the message flow, there's the call to action portion of the registry now that asks you, how are you opting? And basically is how does your customer opt in? How do you know your customer? And getting back to your know your customer stuff, that's where that's going to. And they're going to go to your website. They're going to look at that and say, well, how are they going through the opt-in process? How are they making this really work?
Right.
And you might create a campaign where they're looking at the message example saying, hey, thanks for signing up for, that you signed up for this service, and you get that text message and you go to the website and it has nothing to do with that service that you signed up for. It's going to be like, okay, well, is it a conspicuous place where I can go? Is it clear and conspicuous where I can go to your website? Like I can connect the dots, right? If there's any sense of misleading, right? They will hesitate on approving that. They're going to say, hey, this really just doesn't match. There needs to be clear and conspicuous detail about how you receive that message and why you received that message, and make sure that what you opted into is what you're really getting.
Yep.
So, it has to match. And so what we're seeing a lot, I would say 20 to 30% of the rejections we see that come back to us is because of this issue.
Mm-hmm. It just sounds to me like, Brian, like there's a fair amount of folks that put the cart before the horse. So they're registering sort of at the start of their process. They're maybe just putting sort of an idea of what they're going to be sending into the registry, and then it evolves. And then when they get to the end, maybe the link, you're right, isn't a branded URL, doesn't go to a place that makes sense. They're missing pieces, and you know what I mean. So they're going to reject it, and they're also going to question your traffic. So it's important to do things in the right order, right? Start with that branded URL, and let's switch gears here, Brian, too, and let's talk about opt-in. So, how can folks out there, really build their first party lists, with opt-in? What are some of those best practices? Because I think a lot of people are thinking they can still buy a list, for instance, and send text to it. And you can't do that anymore.
You can't do that. No. So it's how the consumer is really opting with you. Do you have are they going to a website? Are they agreeing to receive those messages from you? Sometimes it's on a phone call. And I've been on phone calls now where I have the agent on the other end say, I'm going to need a yes or a no from you on this question.
Yeah.
Do I have permission to send you text messages? Right. So,
right.
And a lot of the times they really like to see a double opt-in now. So they'll say, okay, do I have permission to send you a text message? Yes. And then you'll get the message and you'll have to reply yes to the message as well.
Right.
So, and double opt-in is not required. But
it's a good idea.
It's a good idea,
Yeah.
And so, and that's, again, that clear and conspicuous, message that comes through. Hey, I went to this site, and what, it's that informed consent. Basically, you are going to be signing up to receive these messages. Click the box, right? And it's really important that you collect this data, right? Because if you're doing everything legitimately, the way this business works is you could do everything 100% correct. People are still going to report your traffic. It's still going to happen. I mean, someone might not remember they signed up,
right?
And someone's going to report to the spam, that 7762 number, and say, hey, I got unwanted a message from this company. And we want to be your advocate. We want to make sure your business is still being able to run smoothly. And we always talk about bad actors in the messaging space, but sometimes we don't talk about the bad actors in the public space, right?
Right.
So, and sometimes that happens, unfortunately, or, someone might just be forgetful. But the best way we can combat that and advocate your case upstream to make sure things are going well for you and to keep messaging going smoothly is by keeping that information, have the opt information, readily available, so we can have your back and go to battle for you in those situations. So
that's right.
But yeah, typically your opt-in process is going to be, it's either going to be through a website, through a phone call, right? It's typically not through an initial text message, because that might be spam, right? Hey, do I have permission to send you text? It's well, that's an automated A2P message that they didn't really opt in to receive. So
yeah. So and Brian, I did be remiss if I didn't say, I know we've got a pretty good crowd here that, everybody on the line, please use, Q&A or the chat box. I'm monitoring those, and feel free to dive in with your questions, and we'll open up the mics here when we're through with our couple questions we got ahead of the event, and let you guys even talk if you'd like to ask us questions. But so Brian, great news on the FCC clamping down on those bad robocalls, right? So, and I've really noticed that those have gone down tremendously. That's good.
Not just that, Tim. I'll plug this right now. Like, they also made the ruling on the ringless voicemail, right? That became an impact too, saying that unless you really opted in to receive that, they no longer want to see that going out either. A lot of the times, they force a bunch of calls to your phone. They hang up the first one once the voicemail picks up, and they leave you the voicemail. Right. But now that's actually being monitored and being told to require opt-in as well. Good. Glad to hear it.
It's funny you say that. I've gotten a couple of those over time where it's like, wait, how did I get a voicemail? My phone never rang.
Pretty funny how they do it. Yeah, they send multiple calls to your device at the same time, and they detect the click for the voicemail, and then they drop the other call.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, people are always going to find a way, right?
Always.
But I did have an open question. Somebody was asking. They said, "Hey, we're new to texting, and it looks like they're an enterprise company here." They were asking, which type of messaging should we go for? Long code, short code, toll free? Like, Brian, how would somebody make a decision on that? And what are some of the advantages and disadvantages?
Well, a lot of that's going to be based on the needs, right? So right off the bat, what's great about short code? Really high throughput. If you see one of the limitations from 10DLC, it kind of has a limit on the pass through, right? Unless you go through all the special vetting and pay the money to, if you get approved, to get those higher throughputs out each day. Short code's really going to enable you to have that higher pass through to the customer. You're going to have higher throughputs, but a big disadvantage of short code is that there's no callback number, right? So what's important to realize in being in the communications industry, right, is we really like to be able to communicate with our customers the way that they like to communicate with us. I like to use that term, right?
Right.
And there might be sometimes you might get a text message and be like, hey, I don't really understand this, or I have a question, I'm going to call, right? Or hey, I get an appointment reminder and I need to change that appointment. And I'm in the car. I don't want to text while I'm driving. I want to make a phone call real quick. I can just hit the button and I can be funneled through. And so now that omnichannel, presence that exists with that number, now there's multiple, functionality that 10DLC number, because now it actually functions for voice too. And I can use that medium if I need to. Or if you're a toll-free company, you're an existing company that has, a full IVR system set up, you're a national brand, and you have, calls and extensions that route all over the place, but you still want to be able to send out a message from that national presence, right? Well, then you might want to use a toll-free number. Right. And still have that callback capability, but still keep your presence. Like if you paid a lot of money for a a custom toll-free number that's very recognizable to your customers that they have memorized, right? It's very easy for them to contact you.
Right.
Through either messaging or for voice, or if they get a message, from that number that's recognizable. So,
yeah.
So it really depends on what your needs are and how you want to communicate with the customer and how you want that customer to communicate back with you. Again, you might want 10 DLC because you want that local presence. You might run a franchise, or you might run a business that's local, and you want to give your customers that understanding that you are there, you're local to them, right? It's that more intimate, kind of, platform.
Yeah. And one thing to take into consideration too, Brian, right, is sort of timing. So like with toll-free numbers, toll-free texting, as well as 10 DLC, 10-digit long code, you can actually come onto our platform, our APIs, purchase those numbers, enable them, and actually start sending messages basically same day. Depending on if you have to register a brand or a campaign, then it's going to take you some time. But a short code can take, a couple of weeks, minimum to get that approved,
it can take a couple months to get done.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting because every medium you pick these days basically gets vetted, right? So the short codes are getting vetted by the mobile operators directly. Campaigns on 10 DLC are getting vetted by, the DCAs. Toll free is being vetted by the carriers. And so everything's being looked at. Everything's kind of being put under a microscope right now. And if you're passing real legitimate traffic, again, it's going to come back to the needs. Toll free might be a little bit more of a cost to you because there's an inbound and outbound leg to that you get charged for, right? Which is a little bit different. So again, it depends on your needs, but
makes sense. I mean, it's a great conversation to have. I mean, there's trade-offs.
But time to turn up is also another thing. 10 DLC is going to get you sending messages quicker.
Right.
Toll free is going to take a little bit of time. It can take up to 6-7 weeks to get some of those numbers approved, especially because that became a requirement, right? For the most part, if you're sending more than 2,000 messages on a toll free number, they're really going to require that. And even if you're sending 2,000 or less, and there's a complaint on it, that can still be shut down until it's approved. So everything's being looked at. And again, what does your turn up time look like? How fast do you need to start getting messages out? What kind of presence are you looking for? And what kind of communication system do you want the customer to have back with you? Do you want to be able to call you on that omni-channel type of, presence? Or do you want to just send them a message like a notification traffic, like heavy notification traffic, scheduling traffic? Short code's a great use case for that, right? Because you can push out a lot of traffic and typically people aren't calling you back.
Right. And Brian, here's a great question, because I think we sort of alluded to it is, we have a lot of folks that are in the voice side of the universe and are starting to push into messaging. They want to add it. So we have somebody here saying, hey, we have a great call center. How would you suggest that we add messaging for a more omni-channel approach? So I think you already said one way to do it is if you have a recognizable toll-free or 10-digit number, we can text enable those numbers and add it as a contact center sort of additional channel that you can plug into your platform, right? Or your offering.
Right. So we offer a hosted messaging solution, and that's where messaging is pretty neat. It runs through a different platform than the voice side does. So you can have your voice, wherever it is now, and say, okay, well, we want to enable these numbers for messaging. You can build those onto our messaging platform and not disturb your current infrastructure.
That's right. Yeah. And it's still fairly new for us, but it's been in the industry just a little while. But yeah, that makes life so much easier. You don't have to port your numbers to enable messaging. You can keep them where they are. It's kind
of nice that they live on in different systems.
That's right. That's right. Oh, that's great. Another question here is how easy is it to get new numbers for messaging or voice? Maybe that's a trick question. It's pretty easy, especially when you work with somebody like Cameo, who's we're a CLEC, right? Competitive local exchange carrier, and we have many hundreds of thousands of phone numbers ready to go, right?
I would say millions of phone numbers,
right.
Tim.
I was trying to be, not trying to overemphasize the truth here, but no, really, you're right. We have lots of numbers.
Yeah, and so that's one of the benefits of using someone like Cameo.
Right.
With Cameo being the CLEC and having the element of being able to turn up your numbers on let's say 10 DLC, right? You can go in and create a campaign, you can buy a number from us right then and there. And once the campaign's approved, you can assign that number directly to the campaign, right?
Yep.
So, and that's all available either through the API suite, right, or through our web portal. So
that's right.
Like a lot of people out there that are buying those numbers third party, right? We actually own the numbers. They're on our network. And I don't want to put a cart before the horse there, but we're also, I think, introducing, some disaster recovery stuff. So now if your voice stuff even suffers, moving further down the road, right? Like there's even a few options that'll be available to, to redirect your voice traffic in the event that, traffic goes down with our CX. So, and who we work with. So
that's right. I mean, it's easy to get those numbers, and you're right that we very soon will be the only CLEC, the only type of company of our kind that has disaster recovery both for inbound and outbound, which is very exciting.
Absolutely.
So you're really secure. Like you can take total control. You have the control as well as access to people who can do it for you to make sure that your numbers keep working and your traffic keeps flowing. Right. From
redundant pathways for voice is pretty significant.
Or as I like to say, from dial to delivery. I think there's some marketing speak in there somewhere. That's great, Brian. Well, I tell you what, that kind of runs me to the end of my list of. Well, we did have one other question, which I think was a holdover from the last one, which was somebody was asking about. Are the rules any different for political voice and messaging campaigns to sort of standard campaigns? I think the answer is yes. And some significant loopholes in there, right, for our political friends, right?
I would say the way we would break that apart, the opt-in requirements, all that stuff isn't different. Like the CTIA is kind of that controlling the body, and they're saying, hey, this is how opt-in needs to work for the consumer to start receiving these messages. The application in which you get that stuff registered is a little bit different, right? There's bodies like the Campaign Verify, who is a third-party verification company, much like WGC or Aegis Mobile, right? But for the political side of things, and they're the ones that are going to go in and give you a Campaign Verify token, which then you plug into, the campaign registry and say, hey, this has been approved. We're ready to go. So the process is a little bit different on getting it verified and getting it approved for. To be sent out, but you're still going to have to follow the opt-in, like the way you're getting lists and stuff like that. You just, like, a lot of people would go and they'd find the voter rules and say, hey, they have a voter roll, we're going to send. They don't like seeing that. Still, they don't like, that message that still can come a part of spam, because the consumer can still say, hey, how did I get this message? Right.
Although you and I both know they're using trickery where campaign volunteers will volunteer their phones and have messages and forwarded to them that they then pass on. So it looks like it's a person sending them, even though it was a robot.
Yeah. So there is a lot of people that try to engage. They make the preliminary engagement, as a P2P scenario where they're engaging with a person, and then they're migrating that towards the A2P traffic.
Yeah, you're right.
So.
All right, well, great, Brian. So look at that, right at the 30-minute mark here. And we do have a fair amount of folks on the line. Again, if any of you guys have any other questions you'd like to ask, use that Q&A or chat box. I do want to say, everybody's on the line, watch for an invite to our next industry briefing is coming up in 2 weeks. And we're going to have our friend, Brian, this guy, Alan Quayle. You've heard his name, right?
I've heard the name. An attorney?
No. He's from he's the leader of Tad Hacks, and he's been doing this forever. And we're going to have Alan on to sort of refresh his keynote from the last Tad Hack, and sort of give his analysis as a third party who works with lots of folks like Cameo about the current state of CPaaS and the future of UCaaS, and there'll be lots of other word salad things going on in there, I'm sure. Telestacks, all those great things. So I'm really looking forward to it. I've met him a few times virtually, but this will give us a chance to chat and share some of his great content with the Cameo folks.
I'll have to tune in for that one. Yeah.
See, there you go. Making content over here.
That's right.
Well, it looks like we don't have any additional questions coming through, Brian, but I think we covered a lot. I think it's a good start to the year. I think I love your input from my side as I see how the industry has changed. Like I mentioned, going into my 5th year, it's great to see what the FCC is doing, what Stir Shaking is doing. Stir Shaken, it's shaking. Stir Shaken is shaking on the voice side. And I think what I'm most impressed about, because look, I'm a consumer just like everybody else on this call. I want to make sure that I only get calls that I actually want. And if I get a call I don't want and it's clearly spam or scammy, I want to make sure that my provider can find out where that came from and put a stop to it. And finally, we all would say that Stir Shaken is not perfect. It's not. And there's still a fair amount of calls that are not covered, but it's a great step in the right direction. So I'm really excited about that going into 2023, that exists on the voice side. And on the messaging side, as painful as it has been, right, Brian, because you live this every day, for registering traffic and working with all these different groups and the carriers, look, on the voice side, it was the government had to get involved, right? The FCC ended up having to come up with a solution because the carriers didn't do it. But on the messaging side, the carriers are like, okay, wait, maybe we learned our lesson a little bit. We're going to do our own thing. And they started, this TCR and these other things for 10-digit long code. So, but at the end of the day, I think it makes these phones a little bit more friendly for you and me as consumers. So I'm really bullish about that.
People are always, again, and what we're going to, and we're already seeing the shift here, Tim.
Yeah.
They're always going to try to use, text messaging and calls to try to do something nefarious, right? Like I like the term that we build a better system, they build a better criminal, right?
Yeah.
And we're already starting to see it. Just a quick tip that it revolves around text messaging, but it also has some social, social media element to it. But if you're ever selling something or trying to, buy something online from a marketplace or anything like that, and someone's saying, hey, I'm going to send you a verification code, they're trying to
yeah, right.
They're trying to reset a password or something somewhere, or sign you up for something, or do something nefarious. And so it'll be interesting to see how the FCC tries to combat people using social media to try to trick people into giving them opt-in codes directly.
Yeah. That happened to me. So you're right. Forget about voice and text messaging. This came through Facebook Messenger.
Right.
Somebody who said, oh, I see you're selling X1. I was selling an old router that I had in my house on Facebook Marketplace. And this random person said, hey, I'm interested in your router. Hey, I just want to verify that this is working right. If I send you this text, could you just repeat back what it is? And he sent me a 5-digit password recovery code. But who else would know that? Right?
Yeah, they send it to your phone and they tell you to give it to them. Hey, I want to send you a code. Can you give me that code?
Yeah, it's them resetting my password and I don't know what it was. So I'm like, right away, I'm like, really? Like, you're going to be this bold as a scammer and just, block. But, I think about my mother-in-law and my mother, like they get these things too. And my mother-in-law was already a victim of that scam last year. So,
the interesting part, the medium is still messaging, right? The medium is still your cell phone.
Right. Yeah.
And it's still coming through to your cellular device through a text message being delivered from somebody.
Yep.
Right. So it'll be interesting how we start seeing things like that being protected going forward.
That's right.
So always an evolving world in the messaging space.
For sure. Well, for everybody on the call, I want to say we're excited here at Cameo as 2023 begins. You'll be seeing some new things coming from us. You already mentioned, Brian, hosted messaging. That's up and running. We've got some other new products that are in the hopper. That inbound redundancy, that's well on its way. We've got some other exciting things coming up as well. We sort of last year started talking about SIP peering, which I'm excited to get more of a breakdown on. We can start talking more vocally about that we're working on right now. Lots of interesting new technology that we're looking to, and you would know this very well, Brian, coming from the tele side of our house. We're on almost at the end of our integration process. So we used to be, see down in the corner, think tele. By the end of this month, we will be 100% Cameo. So that's exciting as well to finish that integration.
A lot of people have been doing a lot of work to
yes,
to build that and to be customer centric on that and building stuff that's a little bit more intuitive, and the walkthroughs through with some of the campaign building are going to be a little bit more spelled out, and hopefully through a lot of these efforts that people have put a lot of time into, we're going to help people get those campaigns verified, and make sure that we're doing what we can to kind of teach you the ropes through the process. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah. Always trying to do the right things, make it simple, give you APIs as well as a platform to do what you need to do. So that's what Cameo is all about. So so if you're in the market looking for a voice or messaging provider, or you're currently doing it and you're just interested in sort of our capabilities, we'd love to have a conversation with you. Head over to cameo.com, click on that get a demo link, and we'd love to have a consultation with you and see, what are you doing? Is there a fit? Is there not a fit? It might be. And, we'd love to get that chance. So with that, Brian, we'll go ahead and sign off here and say, watch your inbox for a copy of this recording, as well as an invitation to sign up for our industry briefing with Alan Quayle, and coming up in a couple weeks. And we hope everybody had a great holiday and a great start to January. I know we have, and we're looking forward to a great 2023. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, looking forward to seeing some of you on calls here in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Building amazing experiences that engage and delight your customers is easy with Cameo. Our smart, reliable voice and messaging solutions are easy to implement and scale with you, so you can deliver more calls and texts, be more competitive, and save money. With Cameo, you get peace of mind and happier customers. Find out why thousands of software platforms and enterprises trust Cameo with their communications. Get a demo today.